Alice is very faithful to the look of the original illustrations by John Tenniel. Characters are rendered beautifully, expressively, and transcend their CGI to be real, bizarre, and entertaining actors rather than effects. The digital work on Queen and Hatter is nothing short of awe-inspiring, as the distorted features are seamless and authentic. Every character is enjoyable to watch and listen to, and there's always something new and amazing, chilling, humorous, or just plain mad to see in every scene. The story is an interesting way to retread familiar ground, but look at classic concepts in a new way as well. It's a sequel, despite the title, which offers opportunities to introduce new characters and concepts. Making Alice older also led to some interesting scenes in which her maturity clashed with her childishness, and characters that had previously regarded her as a child sometimes treated her differently as an adult, notably Hatter. Tim Burton is bound to bring darkness to a production, but here he is not unduly morbid, more creatively disturbing, which is the vibe I got from the original books anyway. I appreciate dark adaptations, but for a film based on the original 2 books, and based on what Disney needed it to be, Tim did a fine job of pulling few punches, but also keeping things safe for the core demographic. There are a number of downright crazy sequences and images that enforce the dreamlike quality of the film well, and give it a menace and beauty all at once, very reminiscent of the first books. The music is Danny Elfman at the top of his game. The main theme is haunting and driving, and every subsequent theme is memorable, and they tie together without being repetitive. Even when the film falters, the music steps in to carry it all the way to the credits. The main conflicts in both Wonderland and the real world are conventional and uninteresting. Also, both conflicts don't seem to have any connection to each other. Curiously, Wonderland is both over-explained and under-explained as to whether or not it's a dream. And by far the biggest issue is that there is no character growth throughout the film. There is little reason to care about Alice being bored during her arranged marriage, and with literal foreknowledge that Alice will beat the Jabberwocky, the film's finale in both respects becomes a foregone conclusion. Her real-world conflict can be solved by simply being obstinate to people she doesn't respect anyway, and this hardly deserves a trip to Wonderland to discover. The film becomes a waiting game, watching Alice wandering around. Mia Wasikowska is a fine actress, but the film itself seems to be aware that the ending in both conflicts is inevitable, and much of what she does is unconnected and arbitrary. You might argue that this harkens back to the original book, but there she had the goal of trying to get home, a goal that did not have a foregone conclusion. In the movie, Alice never has the opportunity or apparent interest in trying to get home, and is likewise convinced her goal to slay the Jabberwock is pointless, so she spends much of the movie without anything to do unless acted upon by other characters surrounding her. This leaves the film with a sense of meandering, and can make sections of it drag. Is Wonderland a dream or an alternate reality? The movie doesn't seem to be able to make up its mind. Characters, objects, and locations previously unnamed in the books are named in the film. This makes Wonderland feel more like Narnia than a dream. However, characters in Wonderland are pointed out to resemble people Alice knows from real life, making it seem like a dream since the world is informed by her experiences. But normally dreams aren't so precise and specific, giving names to every character, object, and location. So instead of coming across as a blurring of the lines of fact and fancy, the movie comes across as confused, as if the filmmakers themselves couldn't decide whether Wonderland was real or not. Likewise, the real world itself is so monotone, bleak, and stylized it comes across as dreamlike. The issue here is that it makes what is real unclear from the beginning, so the quality of Wonderland as a fantastical dream is somewhat lost when every single set and location seems unreal up to that point. Alice does not change one whit throughout her adventure, and neither does any other character. There's plenty of dialogue and scenes devoted to teaching Alice lessons, but these lessons do nothing but confirm to Alice that she was right all along. Alice's first line of dialogue is a complaint, so willfulness was never an issue for her. She always treated people she disliked with open disdain. Her jaunt in Wonderland just proves to her that she's special, and that everyone should respect her for doing anything she wants to. The qualities the film encouraged seem reprehensible. Callousness, egoism, even insanity the film upholds as the highest quality possible. This goes completely against the point of the original book, where insanity was not a good quality, but imagination was. The book seemed to caution a balance between the real and unreal, but the movie declares the real beneath notice. Alice ultimately comes across as a Mary Sue. She's fated to be a hero through no extra effort of her own. She learns nothing except that she is perfect, and does not need to learn or change. Irritating because the characters around her keep praising her wisdom and maturation, and she even tells off her aunt for living in a dream world. Although Mia does an admirable job making Alice sympathetic through her acting, the character ultimately comes across as a bit of a jerk, and the film rewards her for being so. The major conflicts in both the real world and Wonderland should both be connected. Although not overtly stated as a dream, Wonderland should be a partially metaphorical journey for Alice to overcome her real-world problems. Like the original book, whether Wonderland is real or not should be left ambiguous. It should have enough detail to keep the question alive, but largely it should seem dreamlike, hazy, and indistinct. Whether or not Wonderland is real should also be unimportant to the plot and not distracting. Likewise, the real world should be more obviously real so that the distinction can be made. Less a parody of Victorian times and more a historically accurate recreation of them. So that Alice's journey seems more worthwhile, we should see an improvement of her character, aided by what she discovers about herself during her adventures. She should encounter true challenges to her perception and beliefs, and emerge on the other side a changed person. Alice's major conflict in the real world should be a real challenge for her. Telling off an ugly suitor is easy, and she proves this at the end of the movie. It expends no sacrifice on her part, except what she wants to be rid of, and the well-meaning man's feelings mean nothing to her anyway, so his rejection is not her problem. In my opinion, the story actually should have revolved around Alice's mother marrying again. Perhaps Alice looked up to her biological father as heroic and irreplaceable, crafting a myth around his perfection. Much like Wonderland is a seemingly perfect world. With a new man trying to take his place, she would have to surrender, accept someone else, and that crushing mortification would hurt her pride and stubbornness. It would be interesting if she tried to drive her new father away by acting mad, maybe even hurling cups and saucers until she runs away to hurt her mother's feelings and ends up falling into Wonderland. There she would find herself subjected to the same hurtful things she'd inflicted on her parents. Alienation, ridicule, impossible standards. The Jabberwock could then represent the ultimate hatefulness of her own arrogance, also a vivid representation of what true madness really means. This way, the external conflict is more complex since Alice has to do something very brave indeed. Confront herself. Likewise, the conflict in Wonderland with the Red Queen could take on a new dimension as an allegory of the resentfulness Alice bears her mother, although ultimately she discovers it was her abandonment that led to Wonderland being tyrannized. In Wonderland, she could literally run into her own personal demons. Alice is a perfect opportunity to tell an exciting fantasy story with a deeper context. For all the clear effort Tim Burton put into naming Wonderland and its inhabitants, Wonderland should stay indistinct and dreamlike. Characters should be named only by what they are. White Rabbit, Caterpillar, Cheshire Cat. Upperchin, for instance, should simply be known as Cake. In dreams, there are few details and fewer specific names, so keeping things unspecified would give it a more dreamlike quality distinct from the real world. An interesting way to make this distinction would be to have the book itself be in the film. Maybe young Alice's nightmares inspire Lewis Carroll himself to write Alice in Wonderland. This could add a new dimension to the title of the film, as well as be the start of a new theme of madness being corrupted imagination. Alice wishes she could escape her cares into that strange world underground. However, when she actually gets there, it turns out to be much more frightening and dangerous than she imagined. As Alice has a working knowledge of Wonderland in its pure form, the new corrupted Wonderland could be all the more devastating to see. But it could also lead to some humorous moments where she compares characters she encounters in their current states to their literary versions. Even as she physically grows and changes throughout the story, Alice should grow and change mentally as she ventures into Wonderland as well. Wonderland itself should be a literal and figurative mindscape for her to confront manifest subconscious fears and hopes. Her conundrum should be how to banish her conceit and terror to return to her loved ones, how to escape obsessive insanity and return to healthy imagination. In The Red Queen, perhaps, she slowly discovers a grotesque parody of her mother, but not as her mother truly is, instead how Alice sees her, tying her into the real-world storyline and making her a much more intriguing villain. The Hatter might even be a representation of her father, who used to encourage her imagination and make things for her. Dresses, say. But since she keeps his memory in limbo, he's gone a little mad. In the midst of these living metaphors, Alice learns humility instead of conceit. Ideally, the story of Alice should feel like a dream that makes sense when you think back on it and the connections reveal themselves. Finally, one more thing that bothered me.
We meet on the battlefield once again.
We've never met.
Not you, insignificant bearer. My ancient enemy. The Vorpal One.
Wouldn't that make you dead?